I'm excited to have Ricki Oberoi in the studio today. Ricki Oberoi is a serial entrepreneur. Born and raised in UK, moved to America in 1982. 1982. And decades later, he has made Houston his home. Him and his family own multiple restaurants in the Texas market and Florida. But his story is truly inspirational. As a young kid, when he was involved with his family business, as an employee, he did not have the mindset to be an employee. He wanted to be the business owner and entrepreneur. So I'm excited to share Ricki Oberoi's journey today and share with you what inspired him to open restaurants in multiple states. Welcome on board, Ricki.
Thank you for having me.
So born and raised in UK, and you shared with me growing up, your parents had a restaurant, different businesses over there, and they would involve you to work over there. How was that experience?
So yeah, I was much younger back then. I was 12, 13, So my parents had everything. They had a boutique. So my parents were professional. My dad worked for the city council as a CPA. My mom was a teacher. My mom was one of the first women of color to actually be appointed a justice of the peace in Birmingham. So this was back in the 70s, and she was one of the first brown women to be put in that position. So moving to America was a little bit of a challenge for her to give that up because it was a very prestigious position. But they were both professionals. They kept their jobs, but they always had a side hustle, as we call it now. So then my dad did boutiques, he did rag markets, and I would just follow along with him and do my just stand there and do whatever I could do to help them because it was just always in my blood to be part of that. Then they opened a very small little cafeteria, tea shops as we call them. That did very well. Then they opened something slightly bigger and that did well. And then one day they go, we're moving to America. So I said, okay.
What prompted that? Was that family in US?
It was family. We had some family here. England was struggling during the late 70s, early 80s. A lot of political rife, there was a little bit of racism back then. It wasn't, who would have ever thought Rishi Sunak would be, prime minister one day? It was just out of the question. If you watch the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, where they actually call Freddie Mercury, they call him, I'm going to use the word Packy, because it was very common to be called that back then, and now it's unheard of. So it's now it's the P word. So they decided my mom had a sister here. Let's come here, and we opened a gas station. And I hated
straight
it.
to Houston.
Straight to Houston.
Okay.
Straight to Houston, nonstop, from London Heathrow to Houston, Texas. First thing I get off the plane, I see, a customs officer with a gun. Never seen a gun in my life because in England we don't have guns. We have little truncheons. And so it was quite the thing to move in. I felt the blistering heat of Houston. But, we came here and we knew there was, it was a new beginning. As I always said, my dad saw empires fall and nations rise because he came from India to England and so that's what he saw, over his lifetime. He saw the fall of India and Pakistan and nations, or the fall of India or the British Empire, and then nations rise from that. So I always said that's what he saw. So he always had a vision that if he may not do well, as you know, our parents do, they want us to do better. So he came here and we got involved in a few, local fast, quick service restaurants. But then one day we said, let's open an Indian restaurant, which we'd never done. So we got in the Indian restaurant. I was at the hotel school at the University of Houston, the famous Hilton College of Global Hospitality and Management. So I did, I wanted to complete a degree. Went very well for me. Then after I did that, I actually said I'm going to go out and work because I always kind of worked outside and inside the business, bring some outside money in. But I wanted that broad horizon. So I worked at Taco Bell. I worked at the Magic Island on Southwest Freeway. If people still see it with the big Tutankhamun head.
Yeah.
I actually opened that restaurant.
What kind of food they served there?
So it was a magic show. So this is a very American cuisine, but it was the whole experience of walking in and going through, having dinner and then meeting fortune tellers, small magic shows, and then that would lead to the large magic show. So we were backstage and we would see a lot of the secrets that went on, because we would meet all these magicians, and it was probably one of the greatest experiences I had. But meanwhile, but I always shifted restaurants very quick, and I was a terrible employee. I was very uncooperative, to say the least.
You had your own ways of doing stuff?
Yeah, I just had my ways of doing stuff. I couldn't take instructions very well. I always wanted to be the man in charge, and so I worked at what's now JW Marriott. And then I would go back and work at my parents' restaurants. And in the Indian restaurant, it was great, but our Indian cooks and waiters back then could be very challenging. They were short to find, so they would they'd be a bit combative too. I'd come up with ideas and say, let's do this presentation, let's do that. And my dad would side with them, Like, for example, one time I decided that back in 90s, we start decorating plates. So, we would use things like turmeric, tamarind and mango, and we'd do it. And I went on vacation, I came back and I realized that they'd stopped doing that, but actually drawn the decorations on the plate. And they go, this is a lot easier. I'm like,
Shortcuts, huh?
Shortcuts. So, and then I also realized that it was very difficult to organically grow it. I tried opening a second restaurant, and it was just very difficult. Food consistency was hard back then to do what we do now, standardization of recipes. So, and I'd done a lot of fast food. I'd done Taco Bell. I'd done Wimpy, if anyone remembers that, back in England, a little bit of McDonald's. And so one day I told my parents, I said, I love working with you, but I don't.
How old were you then?
I was 20, I was coming up to 22, 23, 24.
Very young.
Yeah. So now I'm about 27, 28. I got married. That did not work out too well for me. So I told my parents, I said, I really need to look at what I want to do. So I just applied for multiple franchises, and except Wendy's. I did not apply. I did not apply for Wendy's for some reason. I wasn't familiar with it. I knew they had a square hamburger. I knew a little bit about Dave Thomas. And I got called back, and everybody did want to talk to me, but it was just very challenging where I'd go, raising money. But then my mom said, apply for this Wendy's thing. And I'm like, no. And then she ordered the...
what was the reservation for not applying
I just didn't know enough about it, and I really didn't think I'd get into it. I don't know. There was just something that just held me back. So 2 times she ordered the application for me. The first time I threw it away, and the second time I thought, that's kind of rude. So I filled it out, sent it in. And in the middle of lunch while working at my Indian restaurant, which was Shiva Indian restaurant, and a lot of people remember that. It was a very famous restaurant.
It was in town center.
It was actually in Rice Village. It was in Rice Village, yeah. That was the second. After we sold it, somebody opened a second one there. But Westview, I had a lot of famous people there. Actually, we had the Bushes there. We had the Lieutenant Governor of Texas there back then, Bill Harvey. So did very well. It was very well to do in the and we didn't do buffet back then. We did thalis, which we were very famous for. So anyway, so I get a call. I'm standing at lunch in my restaurant, and I get a call, and somebody goes, "Hey, my name's Giles. I'm calling from Wendy's. Are you busy?" I go, "Well, yeah, it's kind of lunchtime, sir. Of course I'm busy, but let's chat." We chatted, and then he said, "I want to visit with you." And one visit led to something else, and then finally said, "Well, we have one restaurant in Houston that we want. We are looking for a franchisee, and we'll give you this. We'll sell you this restaurant on Richmond Avenue."
It's already operating, though.
It's already operating.
Okay.
So that's how Wendy's kind of did things. They try and give you operating restaurants when you come in. So I said, okay. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And then I thought, I don't know how I'm going to afford it. But believe it or not, it was not super expensive. There was a minority program to get into. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And so we took it over.
And how did you find about the minority program? Was it shared with you by Wendy's?
There was a checkbox on the form, actually. Are you a minority? And I checked it. And the guy who interviewed me was vice president of minority franchising, and he said, "You don't sound very minority." And I go, "Well, I'm brown, if that helps." And he goes, "Okay," not knowing that the vice president of minority franchising at Wendy's was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. That was back in the 90s. Things were a little different, but nicest guy. Just, I will say I owe a lot to him. So we ended up buying that restaurant, and they said, "We're going to sell you one restaurant, and you have to grow after that. We're not going to sell you anymore." But
what was the timeline given to you to reach certain benchmark of success?
They didn't back then. They didn't give me a benchmark, but I knew my goal back then was 5 restaurants.
Okay.
And the reason why that was because when I worked at Intercontinental as a waiter, as a very aggressive, combative waiter with the bosses, but not with the customers.
You would force things on people's menu?
No, I would force things with my employee. Customer service is my go-to. So with customers, I was the best in the business.
Yeah.
I mean, back then tipping was 15%. I was making 20% back then.
Wow.
So and tipping was a standard 15-10.
Wow.
So I saw this guy there, and he had a nice watch on, and he's sitting with his very pretty wife and the Intercontinental executive team. And somebody said he owns 5 McDonald's, and we're like, wow, he owns 5 McDonald's. And I go, I want to do that. And McDonald's was actually my thing to go to. So I said, I want to own 5 restaurants. And they said, yeah, that should put you in good shape. So eventually over the past 4 or 5 years, we got to 5 restaurants. We acquired one more from Wendy's that they actually were going to close down. on Gessner, and then we built 3 more, and after that we're like, this is fine.
Was all the other 3 also in Houston?
All in Houston, Sugarland, right next to you, actually.
Okay.
That's one of our oldest. And then we went out to Cyprus. So always in the Houston area.
The second one where you said it was not profitable and you were shutting down, you came in, took it over. Few things that you did to get the business up on that location.
Number
what did
one,
you do?
customer service,
Okay.
and quality of food,
Okay.
and putting the right employees in.
So you had
That's
a
it.
turnover with employees, brought a new team in?
Yeah, we had a nice team set up at our Richmond store,
Okay.
and we took some of those guys over,
Okay.
and we flushed out some of their corporate employees, and we just got it. And it went from, I'll give you an example. Back then, it went from 600,000, which is losing money, to 1.2 million, I believe, in less than 9 months.
Incredible.
Incredible, yeah. It was in a perfect part of town. When you talk about location, it had the location, and it sits there. And today, it does amazing for us.
So Wendy's, when they get their franchise, who owns the real estate?
So back then, they owned the real estate, but I had an option to buy. And that was
Okay.
the other reason why I liked the Wendy's model. McDonald's, and a lot of people don't give you that option, but they give you an option. They say, if you find the real estate. So they sold me those pieces of real estate. One of them, I kind of blackmailed them. I said, if you sell me this real estate, I'll put a brand new building up. I'll gut the building out and we'll change it. And they said, why not? Because that way I could leverage the land to
Right.
do a remodel. And that's the other thing, I'd done some SBA lending, which you're probably familiar with, a little bit of minority lending I had back then with the local program. So I said, we'll do that. And I said, absolutely. So we kind of set that path for Wendy's to go, we need to change the look of our store. So we built it slightly different from the Wendy's model. We put some stone out, and like you, very creatively did it all. And so, and it just did well for us. And that kind of created a cash flow that we could do Sugarland, because back then Sugarland was coming up and it was getting expensive. So we bought the Sugarland land, and then we just really focused on buying land after that. So we do have, I'd say we're a fifth out of the 40 restaurants. We probably own 20 pieces of real estate, and that's important to us to do that because it just helps with financial leverage. And then long term, if we stay in the business, we have it. If we don't stay in the business, we can walk off with our real estate and get some money from it. But then we just start growing, and then when we hit the 5th store, then we kind of hit a family challenge. So I got married again, by the way. I did get married a second time. So to who you met, a very sweet girl from. So we had our first child, and after about 3 months, he was diagnosed with a pretty severe pediatric cancer. So that kind of stopped things quite a bit, and so he got better, but then it came back. Okay, and then when it came back very aggressively. So we spent a year just taking care of him and getting him there, and then he's now 22 years old, by the way, so survivor at Boston. He's at Northeastern University, and I will tell you, these cancer survivor kids are just a breed of their own. They're very independent, they're very aggressive, they're very leadership oriented. So then we just start building, and then we got to about 12 stores, and then we realized, well, the only way we can really get in high multiples is to do an acquisition. So somebody near the border, Laredo, decided to retire. And so we went to him and said, you've got 17 restaurants. You're what's called a legacy franchisee. That means they were there from Dave Thomas's time. So we said, we'll buy them. We'll give us first option. And we did. And that was a really big development for us. Of course, as soon as we bought them, 2019, COVID hit. And actually, COVID did very well for us. Because if you know, Texas, I don't think there was COVID in Texas politically. Right. There was no COVID because we kept our restaurants open. Yes. We narrowed it down to drive-through. We learned how to run a very slim, mean machine. And then on top of that, the digital part of the quick service restaurant, which is now a very important part, back then was less than 0.5%, is now about 15-20% because we learned digital is the way to go. Picking up food, ordering on an app, food delivery, the platforms of Uber and DoorDash just accelerated. So, and we did that. And then we continued to build. We built about 4 more stores in between that. And then we did a Florida acquisition. So we went down to Florida and we acquired 17 stores there. And so that took us up to about 40-something. And now we're just building stores. And we're not sure what we'll do with the Florida market. Florida's a different market from Texas, but it does well for us, but I don't know about growing out there, so we're continuing to grow in the valley especially. So that was it. And then my parents, were very happy with it. They kind of eventually sold their restaurants off, but they always stayed in the business because we didn't want to starve as an Indian family. So we had a little restaurant in Katy called Mantra. My parents lived around the corner from that. So we would go in and help them out on weekends or whatever the case was, and then get free food. And so that was a part of it. But the strength part of it was just really being in the right brand. And we liked the Wendy's brand. We realized they're strong. They've got a good business model, and not only that, they're good people. A lot of original deals were literally done on handshakes. Dave Thomas, our original founder, had a very handshake way of doing things. He would tell you something, even though he wasn't really in a leadership position, but he'd tell you something, and then you go to the attorney and go, well, Dave said we could do that. And they're like, oh, okay. So case in point, the Gessner restaurant, it was selling for $950, and somehow I talked to somebody who talked to Dave, who talked to this, and said Ricki does this and Ricki does that, and we ended up getting it for $350.
Wow!
But then obviously we dropped in a ton of money to show them the value of it.
So over the years, 30 plus years in the business.
Yeah. Over 40 plus years.
40 plus years, so almost over 4 decades.
Yeah.
And you started from scratch.
Yeah.
What were things that you learned growing up as a teenager in your parents' business in the UK? There were certain foundational things that you're applying even today, Ricki.
Yes. So I think the most important thing, I think failure is an option, is going to happen. And we all say that. And I think everybody says that. You cannot succeed without failing. And my parents struggled a lot in the business part of their world because they did business in a kind of micromanaged way, which, we tend to do as Indians and Desis. So I learned a lot from that. My dad would worry, he would worry about, he'd still want to handwrite checks, and he was a little bit worried about technology. And I realized, and that was a big learning lesson to me because he was a very hardworking man. He had great goals. He looked after us. He was, a great husband. He was a great dad. There's no doubt about it. We had really good times together. But I knew he was very scared of failure, and I realized that I could not be scared of failure because you're going to fail. And I didn't want to. I never failed drastically, but we've gone through issues. We've gone through COVID. We've gone through the 2008 crisis. Who knows what's happening now because we're under a little bit of a political rift. With the elections and so forth. It's not the smoothest way of doing things. So you have to be ready and prepared to do that. And I think, and so you can't be scared. You cannot be scared. If you get into business scared, then you're probably not going to do very well. Case in point, yours. You built this huge facility, and that terrifies me. When I pull up, I get a little scared. I'm like, oh, this is a big building. So I think and also you have to understand your business inside.
Right.
I can understand. I can still, and I do. So after this, I'll go to my Sugarland store and I'll go in. I'll make sure there's none of my leadership team in there, and I'll go in and I know there'll be some tacos in the back, and then I'll get online with them and we'll cook hamburgers and we'll make fries and we'll bag food and go through lunch. And so my employees are very, very important to me, and I think that's been our number one strength. And we can talk about where our original employees are now and where they've gone to. So
could you share that people who were with your company early on when they joined, they thought they had no opportunity to expand and to grow in the organization, but you created positions and profiles to change people's lives, not just customers coming to eat, but your employees. And you shared that the biggest challenge of being a business owner is people management.
Correct.
It's not product, it's nothing else but people management. People are the ones who work with you. Share with me some of the challenges you face and how do you overcome and how do you keep your team members, employees motivated, Ricki?
Yeah. So there's a conception about the quick service business that it's a dead-end job. And the analogy I use, being married to a doctor, is you can go to a hospital and be an orderly, and that's about all you'll ever do, right? If you want to be a medical assistant, you're going to have to go to some kind of school. In our business, you can start making minimum wage, and you can own a Wendy's. And Dave Thomas proved that because when he opened his restaurant, his assistant managers are now owners. Actually, they're not owners, their kids are owners. They're already on their second and third generations. And in the restaurant business, if you look at most restaurateurs, including Tillman Fertitta, they all started in the kitchens, in the dining rooms, somewhere in that of their hotels and at the front desk. So the growth. So you have to educate your employees that's I'm hiring you for $7.25, $8, $10 an hour, but that's not what you're here. You're not going to make a living out of that. And people go, well, we need living wages, but we're not designed to provide living wages. Our living wage is when you become a general manager. So my best example is going to be a young girl who started with us in 1998. Again, immigrant family. Her parents came from El Salvador. Just sharp as hell, you can say. I mean, just a firefly. And we watched her. She ended up becoming a shift manager. She ended up managing Sugarland, one of our high-volume stores, and just doing things. And then one day we were looking for multi-unit. We were struggling with the multi-unit manager part. And I looked at her and I go, I think you can do
What does
that.
multi-unit?
Multi-unit means running several restaurants.
Okay.
Excuse me, because we had an inventory of 7-8 restaurants. Okay. So I couldn't run them all. If I want to develop, I need someone. So I said, I think you can do this. And she goes, I can. I said, yeah, let's sit down and chat. So we chatted, and we literally we didn't have iPads back then, so we got a yellow legal pad, took her to Macy's, got some nice clothes, and today she's running all 48 restaurants. So she's completely in charge.
She's actually running multiple states.
Multiple states, multiple units. She has multi-unit operators under her. So she's completely responsible for the entire operation.
What aspects of her working style, her work, what stood out to you that you saw in her that probably was missing from other employees?
Well, again, it comes down to her level of energy. Is unstoppable.
Okay.
It's more than mine even.
Okay.
I think, she doesn't know how to stop sometimes. She understands the business inside and out, and she's self-taught, whether it's through YouTube. She can read balance statements. Now, this girl has a high school degree. That's it. Nothing more than that. And she can read balance sheets. She can read profit and losses. She can drill down to the finest thing and go, well, this particular restaurant has got this particular restaurant, and this particular void that's going on the cash register is reoccurring, and I'm seeing it. Or this particular restaurant has this going on. So she can really drill down, and then she can just spit it out to the next to the next leader of the restaurant, whether it be the general manager or the what we call the multi-unit manager. And so she's there, and she's very well respected by corporate, so she keeps a good network with them. And in fact, corporate finally told us, they said, if you don't give her a piece of the action, she's going to leave you. So we did. We ended up giving a little percentage of the business. So.
She's doing effective upward and downward management.
Yes, that's exactly what she does. She does up. She knows how to manage me and Wendy's, and she knows how to manage down. She stays very calm, even though she's got a very ferocious and vivacious personality, but at the same time she stays very calm. She knows how to pick good people, and moreover she knows how to elevate people. So even her subordinates came from sandwich makers. So the multi-unit people, which normally, again, have degrees, she brought them out of the sandwich making or out of the hourly business and said, look, you need to be a general manager. You need to learn your store inside out. Now I need you to learn how to manage those general managers. And she elevates them, and she sits with them, and she has motivational talks with them. She has harsh talks with them. She has passionate talks with them, but she's there. And I think, people just respect her, and my wife is actually her biggest fan, because she tells her, don't make her mad, because otherwise we can't go on vacation. So I go, you're right, we can't.
So Ricki, when you got in the business in your late 20s, started your first Wendy's and the next one, there's certain aspirations people have as business owners to be financially independent, to be your own boss. Like you said, you like to be a business owner than an employee. Did you actually foresee yourself changing people's lives? Because you said this is a generational business. You change someone's life, make them successful, empower them. You're not helping their household, but probably the next generation. Is it fair you probably did not foresee you doing that at a young age? Or do you actually had a foresight, I'm getting this business to change people's lives?
No, I think you're right. I did not. But I think I realized that that's the way I'm going to grow my business internally. Because and back in the 90s, they didn't like promoting internally. They always thought you need to go out and bring fresh blood in. And we did that, and we realized it didn't work, because you become so friendly with certain people, professionally friendly, with certain people in your operation, and they wanted to be part of your family. we always say Wendy's family, and I'm sure McDonald's and Chick-fil-A, they all say the same thing. So we realized that, we've got to promote within the family to grow our business. So you're right, at 20, no, I just knew that, you had to treat people with kindness, and you had to make sure they were secure in the job. There was that triangle, theory X, theory Y of management. So we had to look at all that. But I realized, well, the best way to do it is to change their lives. And I think the first time it happened to me was my original general manager. He ended up buying a house, and because we had helped him and we bought him a fridge, and he told me, he says, because of you coming and buying this restaurant from Wendy's, my life has changed. And I thought, oh, that's how we're going to grow this business, is we have to make these people leaders and part of the business.
What's your long-term vision, Ricki?
Long term, I'm not. I used to be long term, but I'm not so much a long term.
Short term vision.
Yeah, short. Well, it's short and long. I think so. Long term, I don't have a succession plan right now.
Okay.
I have 3 kids. One, as you know, is very heavily involved in politics. One goes to Northeastern, and if he goes to Harvard, I told him, you need to go rule the world. I said, you'll have a Rolodex that will, and you love Wendy's, it's great, but you need the big Rolodex. And then my daughter wants to be like a mom, wants to be a doctor, also a little bit of stand-up comedy too. I don't know if you know, but she does some, you've seen some of her reels, she does stand-up comedy. So I think right now the long term is I do want to keep growing. I want to organically keep adding stores. I would like to do an M&A possibly as we move along. But I think I'll just keep working till I can't stop. But there's no financial vision right now. I'm comfortable. I'm not one of these crazy people that work 20 hours a day. That I will tell you. I probably work less than most people. I take my time off, and I vacation a lot. Even Wendy's sometimes are tracking me down. Where on earth are you? So I would say, but my most important thing is to keep our people happy and keep adding people that we can keep promoting them and making opportunities for them. So could we, we wanted 5 stores. We're at 10 times more than that. Do we want to get to 100 stores? Sure, if Edith can do it, we'd love to do it. If she can handle it and we can keep growing the infrastructure and having the right people in place, we'd like to do that. But where I'm at right now, I'm just bought a house in a place where I never thought I'd live. So I keep forgetting where Sugarland is now, even though I've been here for 12 years. Lost my way on the way over here.
Yeah.
Where's Sugarland? And I've traveled a lot, and that's probably my most favorite thing to do is to travel.
What's your favorite destination?
2 favorite places I've been to is probably African safari and Japan.
Where'd you go for the safari?
The safari we did Kenya, we did Mozambique, we did Botswana, we did the Serengeti, we did almost 20 days of safari, which is just, if you haven't done it, it's something you have to do in life.
You've not.
Oh, you've got to do it. Take the kids, and it's just phenomenal to see, 1,000 giraffes and 50 elephants, and these animals eating each other, even though it's horrifying, but it's the true circle of life. Mm-hmm. So you see all that and see cheetahs and the people out there. It's just, you truly are in the wild. And the best thing is that it belongs to them, not to you. So when you're in these trucks, they tell you very clearly that we give way to the animals, So if you get eaten, it's kind of tough luck. But these stories of they have a guard sitting there with a gun and nothing like that. You follow the rules. You give them right of way. Yeah, So we saw a grey rhinoceros, a white rhinoceros. So it's just fascinating.
Incredible. So safari and Japan.
Japan is just the true service, true hospitality. So. And then we got to see Hiroshima. So I enjoy that too. I enjoy seeing the tragic part of life. I've been to the concentration camps in Poland, went to Hiroshima, been to India where the Brits killed the Sikhs up in Punjab. Mm-hmm. So I like to see that to remind us of what history brings and how we have to look back on history. So. But I do love to travel. But, I'll go anywhere. England obviously is my favorite place. I went there twice in a month last month. So just, if I can get an excuse to hop on.
Travel is passion.
Yeah.
You're also passionate about supporting certain organizations, non-profit and charitable organizations.
Correct.
Talk about that, Ricki.
Yeah, so the biggest one is the Adoption Foundation. So Dave Thomas was adopted, and that's what brought me into that. And until you start seeing the numbers that we are, an advanced country, and we have 400,000 children sitting in foster care. we have 100,000 children what are called aging out. So that means they're going to reach the age of 18. And if they don't get adopted, they are literally become homeless. Because after you become a foster child at 18, it's over. And if you look at people like Tiffany Haddish, they will tell you that how you leave a foster home at 18 is they give you a trash bag and you put your clothes in it and they say, off you go. Foster children travel in trash bags. That's literally what they do. So we try and raise suitcases and things like that for them. It's, and there's no reason why we should have foster care or that much foster care. So over the past 20 years, I think Wendy's has raised over $300 million just in foster care. We've presented to Congress. We have our own stamp. We have our own rules now, opening agencies, making it easier for people. So we do things like collecting money, like selling Frosty tags. I'm sure very famous. You can get a free Frosty. So we're very passionate about that. And when we go up to convention, we try and really, out of our own personal generosity, to provide funds to that. And then another one, which obviously you know about, is the Faris Foundation. So that's a local one. Faris was a young boy who passed away from cancer in the same treated in the same hospital as my son was. So when Asha Varani approached me and said, what can you do? We did it out of one restaurant. We gave it 10% one day. It was like $1,000 or maybe not even that. It's like $500. So I said, well, we need to make it bigger. So we worked with Councilman Nosha. Then we convinced the entire district or the entire Houston area, I think Laredo, San Antonio, let's do this every year. And we sell these bands for $2. We just finished selling them. And again, free Frosty, really cool band. And we've raised nearly $200,000 for her. And if you go to Texas Children's, you'll see the Faris Music Room, the Faris Art Room, the Faris Reception Center, where we used to go. It just used to be the reception center. Now it's named after Faris himself. So that's important. And then we'll look at small charities, local charities in Houston. Someone will call us and say, I need some help with a homeless shelter or with this. And we really, and giving back. I've noticed the more you give, people say it comes back, and it really does. And then another little strange thing, which my wife and I do, which I don't TikTok it, but we'll go to, late night restaurants like IHOP or somewhere, usually towards the holidays, and we'll find someone working there, and they'll say, well, yeah, I've got 3 kids, I'm working here, making my money, and then we'll leave a really life-changing tip. So we'll do that, we'll just say, this is for you, make sure Christmas is taken care of. So we like doing that, and we do it probably 4 or 5 times a year. We just go out and we don't TikTok it, we make sure it doesn't get on the news or anything. We just put the cash down and we leave, and it just changes because we have the ability to do it, and it's nice to do it. I mean, there's,
that's incredible. You are
we just
changing people's lives, strangers, when you see a need for them to get forward or move ahead in life.
Yeah.
As where you are successful today, where you sit today with all the success in the market, families behind you, you have 3 kids, your wife who is your torchbearer and gets you going.
Yeah.
Someone who's listening to you today, Ricki, who may be flipping burgers at Wendy's, at Burger King, what would you want to tell them today? Because I believe no matter what you do, you're flipping burgers or changing flat tires, if you have the passion for what you do and do it with a true intent and good heart, where you can lead with that professional, that feel is incredible. What would you want to say to somebody who's flipping burgers today at minimum wage? What would you want to tell them today, Ricki?
So I just tell them, keep flipping burgers, but the opportunity is there to grow. So you may not become a franchisee, but you could become a general manager who are now making close to 6 figures. You definitely, after that, you could become a multi-unit manager. And then after that, you could go into corporate. And it happens, and we see these stories. There is a senior vice president who just retired from our company, and he started an assistant manager 42 years ago, and he finished in senior leadership. So I know he's walking away with a ton of cash to look after himself and his family. He's put one son through medical school, I believe, and the other one with. So I think you can't just go in and go, this is a dead-end job. You've got to go in with open eyes, open mind, everything. And that's everything we do. So like I said, I worked at rag markets, believe it or not. I worked at West Park Rag Market. Everybody knows that, because when we came to Houston, we went through some financial struggles. So my dad said, let's do a side hustle. Saturdays we'll go sell shirts at the West Park Market. And I'm like, okay. So we did. We got in the car every morning and sold shirts there because we knew that at some point something will multiply out for us or something will work and it'll click, you know. I think my parents even sold diamonds for a while. So they did everything, you know, we did everything. So, but I was just very stuck on the restaurant business because my mom even told me, go sell life insurance, go sell real estate, you know. I'm not a real estate guy. I just can't do it. I can't do what you do. You can't do what I do, you know. So I think you have to learn your passion. And if you're at Burger King, then you make a decision. Do I like the smell of the food? You know, do I like the smell of the food? Do I like being covered in grease and getting in my car? And if I like it, you know, and I love it. I love coming home smelling of grease. It makes my whole family mad, but you know, it's a perfume to me. I stand there and I watch that meat sizzling on the grill, and so that's what I tell people. You've got to learn the passion. When I'm correcting people in the restaurant, I tell them, okay, the Wendy's motto is it's fresh and it's hot. So our meat is fresh. We don't use frozen meat. And the hamburger's square. And I think I've told you why. Do you remember why?
No, tell me why.
Okay. Because we don't cut corners at Wendy's. We don't. We do not cut corners. And it's part of our brand logo.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I said, would you eat that? You know, there's no difference between my piece of meat. It's going to upset a lot of people, but there's no difference between my piece of meat and a fine steak at Steak 48. If my meat is prepared properly, exactly like, and my fries are hot, it's the best meal you ever have. You know, it's hot, it's fresh and juicy. And I tell people that all the time. Make it so if you're just standing there, you know, just playing with your hamburger and it's burnt, it's not burnt. But so you've got to care, and you've got to care for the customer. So we can talk about that. The customer obviously is number one, not necessarily always right. We used to have that old mindset that customers are right. Not necessarily always right, but they are number one, and we have to do our utmost best. And like I said, that's my passion. You know, a terrible employee, but great customer guy. You know, even now I'll go to people's houses and I'll start picking up plates and putting them in there. No, people go, what are you doing? I go, no, it's force of habit. Yeah. Just do that. But because you learn a lot from your customer too. And customers will motivate you. If they see you, see what you're doing and you've got a passion behind it, they'll actually tell you. I had customers tell me, oh, you're going to go somewhere. I saw a lady driving, when I first had my Wendy's at Richmond, this lady used to come in a beautiful Jag, and I used to look at her, beautiful car. She goes, don't worry, someday, you know, you'll be there. Well, I'm not a Jag guy and I'm not a car guy, but it just, but it was just nice to hear it, that someday you'll be there. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep your nose clean. That's another thing. You have to be honest, and you know that. Dishonesty is probably, I think, is the biggest downfall of our people. So we've also made sure that we're very honest. And I've learned that, and I learned that more even from my kids, because my kids are either, somebody taught me at college one day, either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. There's no gray area.
Yeah.
Right? So my kids are very straight line, and as Indians, we like to cross the gray areas here and there and test the risk factor. But I think as I get older, they're like, Dad, is that what you do? I say, yeah, that's what I do, because I want to be accountable to them. So I think these are the things you got to look at. And so, like I said, if you're in a flipping hamburgers, go out and talk to customers. They will make your day better.
Ricki, it's an inspiration. Every time I talk to you, learning your story, coming from the UK, coming to America, and always had the mindset of being an employer, and you've transformed people's lives for the next few generations, and you still are growing. Do you foresee yourself where one of your kids would potentially take it over, or would you find a foster kid to take it over?
Yes. We're looking at my middle one, like I said, depending what he wants to do. He's just... he's actually very good. He does come and spend time with me in the business. He's very aware of it. The other two put pressure on him to go take care of the business. So we're not at the stage yet where I'm probably ready to work with the child in the business. Like I said, I'm a little difficult to work with too. Foster child, not necessarily, but the young girl who runs the company, maybe she'll continue the legacy. There'll always be a business portion left over, whether it's the real estate part or something. So, but we'll keep doing it. And like I said, there's one of our franchisees just passed away. He was 90. So, and he was standing in restaurants until he was 90. Wow. And then I think he just, passed away. Just age took over him, and that's it. So, and we always say, if you retire, what are you going to do? And the worst thing to retire and to have nothing to do, is actually a face of death right there. I mean, that will kill you. So. Sometimes, I go, oh man, I'm done. I'm done for the day. And then I'm like, no, I'm not done for the day because I need the headache, you know.
Right.
So, but I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and then also it gives us the opportunity to meet people like you and our mastermind group, and just meeting people around, and it's a sexy business. People get very fascinated when we say. My wife always says that she's a physician, and she goes, you know, it's a lot. She loves to come to my conventions. You know, she loves to come to my meetings or our meetings. So people do get fascinated by what we do. A quick story: I was at a wine tasting. It was John Bon Jovi's son that was promoting a wine, and they said John Bon Jovi might show up, and I was like, I'm going.
Okay.
I'm going. I don't care about his son. So we went there. It was a private club, like a little private setting, and the rules were set. No touching John Bon Jovi, no pictures with John Bon Jovi. You just go, you say hello, and you walk away if he comes. But you need to focus on the son, and you need to taste the wine. The wine was not good. Okay. So in walks John Bon Jovi, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And there's like 100 girls there and me. So I just pushed my way in. I'm very assertive that way. Pushed my way in, and I said, Mr. Bon Jovi, I said, you're the best. And I told him a few stories. And I had a Wendy's pin on, and he goes, why you got a Wendy's pin? I said, Wendy's franchisee. And he goes, really? I go, yeah. And he goes, tell me how that works. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I said, well, I bought a store, and kind of told him the story quickly. And I don't know if you're going to cut this out, but he kept going, get the F out of here, like this, kept hitting me, you're kidding me. I'm like, and I got, John Bon Jovi's hitting me on the chest, and Bon Jovi. And then finally I said, sir, you're worth about $500 million. I'm not. And he goes, but this is a fascinating story. Then apparently he has restaurants where you walk in, there's no prices on the menu. You just pay what you want, and the money goes to the homeless. And if you're homeless, you eat what you want, and you work afterwards. So he has these, Bon Jovi restaurants, he calls them, and he's got about 4 or 5 of them in New Jersey. Very charitable. Nicest person I've ever met. And then finally I said, we're not supposed to take selfies. He goes, we're taking one.
You're taking one?
We're taking one. I said, yes, sir. So I took one, and we talked for 15 minutes. And then finally I said, sir, I think there's about 20 naked women behind me who have now taken their clothes off. So, but the point was, you just meet these people, and you realize, that you have to remain humble too. I think we haven't talked much about that, but remaining humble is, it doesn't, because you might be the best in the room, but there's 100 people. But it's just one of those. It was a fascinating meeting with him. That I met one of the greatest rock stars in the history of music.
Because you're a big '80s fan.
I am.
You go for all the concerts, band when they come to Houston. But meeting your idol, Bon Jovi, but not just meeting with him, but engaging with him for 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's life-changing for people.
It is life-changing.
And at some level, you connected with him, because prior to that, you probably did not know that he had all these restaurants and how it was done. I truly believe, Ricki, that things happen for a reason, and every dot has been put in this world, in this universe, to be connected. All you have to do is be out there, put your best effort. What dot gets connected where, you never know. You have changed so many people's lives, and you still continue doing that. Multi-state franchise owner, Wendy's is a brand, but you're an inspiration to a lot of people. The time, effort, energy, and the contributions you make to all the foundations is changing lives, especially the one for foster kids. I did not know till today that when you're 18, you expected to move out, and they move out with a trash bag.
You are homeless.
All the belongings in one bag.
One bag.
It's as though you're leaving the prison with a bag, and you are trying your best to find resources, find families to adopt these kids before they turn 18. You're an inspiration, Ricki. My move today, learning about your journey from UK to Houston and a further growth, and I'm sure people listening, watching you today will say, you know what, I want to be the next Ricki.
Well, parents are a big part of it. You know that. Parents motivate us. The last story I'll tell you, when I was a year old, living in England, and we had, so you could discriminate against Indians, not provide housing, no colours allowed and so forth. My mom is sitting there, and there's a church, St. Stephen's Methodist Church. We're Hindus. My mom bundles me up. My dad goes, where are you going? Oh, there's a baby competition. I'm taking him over there.
At the church?
At the church. So takes me over there. She said, I bundled you up, and it was freezing cold, and I went over there, and my dad goes, are you mad, taking a brown baby to a white church? And so they made the announcement, number 3, number 2, and first place. And my mom goes, oh, nice. And they go, and also now there's champion baby, and I won the champion baby membership.
What was the contest about?
Pretty Babies, champion, good, beauty contest, and I won champion baby, and I still have the silver cup. I was
Wow.
actually going to bring it. I still have the silver cup. I was going to tell you about that, but yeah, that's so. These are the things I think my mother gave me my biggest inspiration on, just to be. So my dad wanted me to be rich, which means nothing. You know that. I mean, that I don't know how to define rich. You want to be successful. You want to be financially stable. You want to be able to provide the things we talked about. But my mom was the one that drove that. I mean, you need to be somebody. You need to be a leader. To be as good as them, you have to be better than them. Referring to the people in England back then when we were facing these challenges of racial discrimination and so forth. So
you've been a winner ever since you were 2 years old.
yeah, a year old actually. I was
year old.
A year old
baby.
Yeah, next time you come to that, then remind me, I'll show you the cup.
I want to see the cup.
So yeah, and we just went back to the church last month. We just happened to drive by. My wife goes, "Is that the church you won?" I said, "It is." So we went in and we met the vicar there, and I told him the story, and he was just flabbergasted. He goes, "Really?" He said, "Oh," he said, "They were." And then he looked up and he said, "Oh, this was the vicar back then." And but I won a baby competition, so I am a champion baby.
Incredible. Champion since 1 year old.
1 year old. Try my
Champion
best.
for a lot of people.
But I have to spread the word,
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Ricki, truly appreciate the time you spent today.
Absolutely.
Sharing your story, inspiration for all of us over here. And I'm looking for more Wendy franchisees under your belt from 2 states to maybe multiple states in the future.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. And
I would love for you to have a copy of my book that I wrote
absolutely.
about a year back. I'll sign it as well for you.
Did you sign it?
I'm going to sign it.
Okay, make sure
Yes,
you sign it.
I will.
We'll
Thank you,
put this
Ricki.
up. Oh, it was
Thank
a
you very
pleasure.
much. Absolutely.
My friend, thank you.
Thank you.